Hi, and my name's Sarah Connolly, one of the coaches in the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle program. Our episode today is highlighting one of our former Project 90 members who's been out of the program for around 2 weeks now. And I'm so excited to have Simone on the podcast this evening because she's going to share with us her journey from start to end, and then on to where she's going on from here. So welcome, Simone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? How old are you? Where are you from? A little bit about your life.
So my name's Simone and I'm 49, nearly 50. I work in health management here in Australia. And today I'm 103 days alcohol-free.
Wow.
So forensically, my hair could be tested and you won't find any alcohol in it. That's my big claim to fame.
We won't be testing your hair.
I've just finished the Project 90 a couple of weeks ago and life's looking really good, alcohol-free.
Fantastic. So you're based in Australia, and do you work primarily from home or are you an office worker?
So I work in the office. Up until a year ago, I lived out in rural Northern Territory. So although the town had alcohol restrictions in it, my drinking pretty much ramped up. I work in office. I was probably quite fortunate. I never really had to do the working from home because wherever we were, it wasn't affected by COVID restrictions at the time. We were always in areas where we were kept away from it.
Yeah, okay, no worries. And Simone, so 103 days ago, how did life look for you before you started this Project 90 adventure?
So my drinking had been escalating over many, many years, but it came to I hit a rock bottom last June, and it was probably it wasn't the first time I tried to give up alcohol, but the first time that I did it with any meaning. So I went in it very gung-ho. I tried absolutely everything. You name it, I was either doing it, on it, reading it. And so from that, I learned lots of things about alcohol and the effects on the body and things like that. But I just wasn't able to completely give it up. And I was just very fortunate, probably, January, one of my friends who I'd met in another sobriety group had received an email from you, Sarah, about this. And, I went into it thinking 90 days, wow, that's too long. I probably won't succeed. But I had to do something else because I still wasn't completely alcohol-free. And I knew that I was going to get worse. So I rang up, thinking I wouldn't actually get selected. And I did, yeah. So at that stage, my drinking probably had curbed, but it was on the way up again.
And you said that when you first signed up, you were like 90 days sounds like a long time. How convinced were you that you could make 90 days when you first signed up?
Oh, no. I had all good intentions, but probably the first time alcohol became an issue that I can remember was around about 13 years ago. And so the longest I'd gone alcohol-free in that period, or any period that I could remember, was about 24 days. So 90 days was basically an impossibility. But it was basically my last opportunity. Like I wasn't at rock bottom then, but this was my last opportunity to kick it and to become alcohol-free because I had exhausted every other option, and I knew that alcohol wasn't serving me. It hadn't served me well for many, many years. So I just did whatever I could, and this came up.
Yeah, it's amazing. So many people will say they've tried everything, but you just kept going and going and going. What is it that really motivated you to keep going? Like, how was alcohol affecting you in your life?
At the very beginning, back in last June, I lost a very, very important relationship. I was on the other side of the country. I didn't have anywhere really to live. I then lost my job, not really because of drinking, but because the ramifications of drinking. I was depressed. And I was hurting myself when I was drinking, so it was escalating. And there was never a time anymore when I drank that I moderated. So I know not everyone hits a rock bottom and everyone, it's that terrible, but for me it was. So the reason I kept going at the very beginning, it was because I thought it would win my partner back and he'd come back to me. And I probably had that in the back of my mind and motivation for a long, long time. But until I really wanted it for myself, everything was just going so shitty in my life that I thought this drinking has to be the problem. So I had to get rid of that so that everything would go good.
Yeah. And I think the thing that really strikes me with it, anybody that goes through this journey, no matter, everyone has their own rock bottom, don't they? It's like for some people, it's a loss of a relationship. For some other people, it's maybe they had a terrible hangover one day and just said, no more. So everyone has their varying moments of decision. But what is so wonderful is that you've had a number of those and you've just every time kept coming back with that single-minded focus that ultimately alcohol had to go.
Yeah. So I think that's where I benefit in the Project 90. So for the project, you have to, the project is 90 days alcohol free. There's no, don't have to sign up to say you're never ever going to drink again. But in that 90 days, you have to commit to being alcohol free. At the very beginning, and especially in my pod group, in my Marco Polo group, there were a number of people that were still playing with what was going to happen post 90 days. But I was very steadfast that there was never any thought of going back to drinking or learning to moderate or any of that. This was my path to an alcohol-free life. So in a way that made it a lot easier because I didn't have any decision about what happens post 90.
Yeah, definitely. I think that really does, like, it's so much easier in many ways to just commit, isn't it, than to
Certainly.
have that 1% of uncertainty that can always lead us back. So tell me, when you signed up for Project 90, you obviously were very committed and focused. What did you expect? And then how, or was it different to what you expected?
It was completely not what I expected. So at the very beginning, we were not sure whether we were going to commence on the 1st of Feb or the 1st of April.
Mm-hmm.
So I alternated whether I wanted to be Feb or wanted to be April. The closer it got to Feb, I was thinking, oh, I've got this on, I've got that on. Maybe it'd be good to start in April. But I was selected for the 1st of Feb. So, and in that time, I'd started to listen to some of the podcasts, and I really then started to question my eligibility for the project. Because if you listen to any of the ads for it, or if you listen to the podcast, it's high achievers, high earners, CEOs, entrepreneurs. And I was just a health manager from basically outback New South Wales. So I went in, I guess, thinking that at the very beginning that I wasn't probably going to be a good fit, and all that self-doubt and things like that. Then I had used Marco Polo before, but we were told we had these pods and had to introduce ourselves on the pods. And so I listened to some of my group in the pod, and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm in the wrong spot. But, I thought, oh, I'll just go to the first call. Got on the first call, and within about 5 minutes, we were put into breakout rooms. And I thought, stuff this. I'm certainly not going to do this anymore. Had I known that we would have breakout groups, I wouldn't have even got on that first call. But yeah, so I felt really like the imposter syndrome really, really big time. And it probably took a couple of weeks, but I listened. I did as many calls as I could. A few of them were for me because we're in Australia, the times were during work. So I think 4 of those calls were in the middle of the workday, like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So I just committed to doing all those. So I would get on like at as many as I could. So probably mostly 3, but 4, sometimes 5 calls a week. Wow. And I participated in the Marco Polo, even though it killed me at the beginning. And that was the only way I got through that first couple of weeks, because listening to other people who, although they were CEOs of these amazing businesses, they were not, I wasn't that unique really. We all were drinking and we didn't want to drink as much or at all like each other.
So tell the listeners how important that Marco Polo, because some listeners may not know what Marco Polo is. So can you explain a little bit about how that helped you?
Yeah, so the Marco Polo is a group, and it's like leaving voice message, but it's a video. So for us, it was really good for us Aussies, because the time difference, you could wake up and there could be heaps. You'd be able to listen to your fellow podsters, we call each other. At the very beginning, we were all very polite, and we'd introduce ourselves every single time. And I think not the breaking point, but the making point of our pod, and I don't take responsibility for it, but it was I did it. I broke down one day, really upset, and not because I wanted to drink. Just the problem with not drinking is that then you have to feel the feels, and we both know I'm not very good at that. So I was on the pod, and I became you're very vulnerable on there, because although you are talking to your group, you don't feel like you're talking to your group because you're just looking at this video of yourself. And so from that, though, I think every single person came back with support, some ideas, encouragement, and that kind of broke the ice for our group. We all became quite vulnerable when we needed to. We learned so much about each other. It's interesting because even on the calls, sometimes you don't even talk about alcohol. But we learned things about people's families, what their pressures were when they were going out. And it could be tricky. We had some pod calls from bathrooms where people were a bit worried. But it was it was the one ingredient that made these 90 days so successful for me.
So, excuse me. So the connection that you were able to make with people on a real level, like real connection, real vulnerability, where it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or any other profession, it's all about being able to be vulnerable and open with this common shared challenge, right?
Yeah, well, at the time, I've just relocated, and I'm in my own place now. But at one stage, I was almost like couch surfing, and the friend that I lived with, I've been friends with since boarding school, so 35 years. These people on the pod knew more about what was going on in my life than she did. Not because we're not good friends, but there was no when you're vulnerable with people, like on the level that you are in the pods, it's like a friendship on steroids. And I'm still we now have a breakout pod, and most of our pod is still on there. We contact each other daily still. We've started to catch up weekly and have a Zoom call. And everyone could list something that's going on, good and bad, in people's lives. But the relationship that it's very difficult to describe to people that haven't experienced it. But these are true friendships. These are people that know you, not necessarily at your worst, but something that's been that bad that you've decided to go on a 90-day project to fix. That, yeah, and as you say, it doesn't matter if they're CEO or entrepreneur. One of my pod is building a boat, another's building a plane. They, at the end of the day, they're my friends now.
Yeah.
And true friends. I know that I could get on my WhatsApp now or even on our group and say, hey guys, like the other day I was really upset about something and then there was like 14 messages. Are you okay? Call in, make sure you say hello. Yeah, it's amazing. And it is until you experience. And I don't think anyone in Project 90 would leave not seeing the value in the Marco Polo pod groups.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, having watched the transformation of people in that time frame. Obviously, the first part of it is having the courage to commit to joining. And then, as you've said, there's more, there's the fear of the calls and the breakout rooms and the videoing, but this constant up leveling and getting out of your comfort zone with other people that are doing the same thing for the same reason. And I also wonder about the lack of judgment because everybody has very similar experiences. Would you say that that was a big part of the opportunities to be around people that don't judge you in this space?
And there's no judgment whatsoever. And that is probably the unique piece to this group. Towards the end of the 90, we had people still on the fence about moderating and, wondering whether they could still be part of our group if they did it, if they went back to drinking. And, we all said we love them either way. But there was a bit of hard love, like, why are you thinking that? What part in the 90 days was alcohol still attractive for you? But it was said in a way like, it doesn't matter if you do that. You're still cared for by us. You're still going to be supported by us. And the thing is, you weren't in the group. I know this sounds really weird, but when you stop drinking or when you decide to become alcohol free, you're actually judged on that more than what you are for drinking, which is crazy. I had a fair few events that were like first ofs, alcohol free, and having to explain every single time, and I'm quite open. I've said, I used to love drinking wine. However, I can't remember it being a good thing for me in many, many years. That's probably one good thing about not being able to moderate. It was always a mess. So, but, I know some of my podsters, they'll go to things, have one drink. Whereas for me, it's been different because I've either been driving so I couldn't drink or I'll just say no. I had to give up because it was a horrible result for me. But the judgment, you don't realise the judgment until you stop and you have to explain why you're not drinking.
Yes, and I know that that's quite a deterrent for a lot of people, is that fear of being judged outside in the real world, or not so real world, should we say. How did you navigate? I mean, you've explained you had sort of a phrase that you used which you were comfortable with. How did people respond and how did you deal with those responses? Did you get a lot of pushback or did you get some people saying, oh, that's amazing? What was the response like?
I probably didn't get that many people saying it was amazing. I did get a lot of people saying, oh, when you finish this, will you go back to drinking? Like it was a phase I was going through. And I even had people that had seen me really messy say, oh, you weren't that bad. And so that was interesting, that part, because I was that bad. So I don't know what part they missed. But yeah, I think like I've got some friends that are really, really healthy. They're fit, they will watch what they eat and they drink. so even for those people, it's like, well, you know, even just saying, oh, I'm not drinking for my fitness or, for my health, that sort of didn't even wash. But I have used that for my sleep, because I kind of worked out I probably haven't slept properly for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. But when you drink every day, every sleep's not going to be good.
Yeah.
My most recent, they were very supportive in that they didn't care. They weren't pushing alcohol. Have one. But they did mention, oh, will I go back to drinking? And I just said, at this stage, I can't say it. We had one night where they had been drinking margaritas all night, and they were all a bit tipsy when we got home, and they were lovely. But I would have finished that off with a bottle of wine. So that few margaritas would not have been just that for me. And I guess having that realisation keeps me motivated to stay the path that I'm on now.
I think it's a really important point that you make in relation to, how much, or when people say, you weren't that bad. And I think that's, that there's two reasons possibly for that. Firstly, that they don't really see the worst because they're probably not in the best state either to assess the damage. But also, I think it reflects possibly back on their own drinking and thinking, well, gosh, if she thinks she was bad, I might need to look at my own behaviours. And I certainly had this answer because people would say to me, well, how much were you drinking? With this kind of, because I was very good at hiding and I was always quite put together, even though I could drink a lot. I had a very high tolerance. So I ended up saying, well, I was drinking too much for me, which was the reality. And I think this is important for listeners to know that it's not about how much you're drinking. It's about whether that amount is too much for you in the context of how you want to live your life.
And that's the beauty of Project 90, because although I know lots of things about the people in my group, I actually don't really know what their drinking habits were. I don't really know. Everyone, every now and again, someone will say, oh, I used to drink a bottle of this or something like that. But I know lots and lots of things about people in that group, but I don't really know because, a bottle of whiskey to someone is as bad as 2 glasses of wine for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is the difference. I remember years and years ago, I went to AA and I actually, at the beginning, so I was in Sydney, and so I went to one that was close to where I worked, not where I lived. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm not drunk enough for these people. Oh, I shouldn't be here. This lady was drinking, had a bottle of wine in her car. I didn't do that. So I thought I was not drunk enough to be at AA. But so, and then again later on down the track, I revisited AA again, and he just wasn't supportive in the way I felt. I was a little bit scared of having to find 12 people or whatever I had to do to say all my sins to, and there was lots of things that didn't resonate with me. It didn't make me feel comfortable. Whereas this group, the Project 90 group, a few people had been to AA as well, have tried that. But one of the things that I like about what James says is that we're not all alcoholics, We don't use that word. We just have a problem with alcohol. I think it's a bad word for society when you feel that that's what you are, because you feel that you're the stereotypical what we envisage an alcoholic to be, and when you're not that person, or you feel that you're not that person, you either justify your drinking to continue, or you're a bit lost in trying to become alcohol free.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think the thing that you just said about with AA, I'm not bad enough for AA. And then on the flip side, I'm not good enough for Project 90. It's like the reality is that we are all worthy of support, no matter who we are, how much we're drinking. If the drinking is problematic, we're worthy of support. And one of the things that you also said was you didn't really know how much people in the group were drinking.
No.
Which is so, it's actually really wonderful to hear that, because I think it speaks to the fact that in Project 90, the focus isn't on what's been, what's past, what we're ashamed of and the guilt. It's really focusing on who are you as a human being and how can we find out more about that person so that we can validate that person separate from the behavior of drinking and really build that sense of confidence, respect, pride, and love in that person. So,
yes, certainly.
Hey, James here. Just a short interruption to share with you some of the results that folks have been getting inside of our 90-day stop drinking process. This is Jessica Gaines-Jarbo from Kentucky. She says, I've now got joy, focus, presence, clarity. This is Glenn Granger from Massachusetts. I'm more patient. This is Jenny Unglis from Northern Ireland. I discovered strength I didn't know I had. This is Doug Rice from Texas. I have unbelievable clarity. This is George Bird from New York. I'm calmer. And this is Russell Belcher from Australia. My health has improved. I've lost 20 pounds, says John Keltner in California. If you would like to create these type of results, then you are welcome to apply to be part of our 90-day stop drinking process, which is called Project 90. The link is in the show notes. You can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project 90. Back to the show.
tell me a little bit about the positive experiences. We've had the Marco Polo. What did you learn in Project 90 that made the most difference, do you think, for you?
So, as I said before, I especially in the last 9 to 12 months, I've been doing everything I possibly could. And I remember being on the Marco Polo at maybe between week 2 and 3, and saying, oh, I'm worried because at the moment it seems so easy and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so I had that trepidation for quite a while, because we were getting up to like nearly day 20. And at this stage, I hadn't been, everything was good, was easy. And so I thought, no, it can't be this good, can't be that easy. And it actually was. It actually was. And then a few others said the same things. I went, yeah, it is. It's been easy. And we had a gentleman in our pod that has also done this experiment before, this project before. And he said this time, because he was more involved, he felt it was easy as well. And I think if people are considering the project, and I've then said all these horrible things at Marco Polo and the breakout rooms, the more you do those, the more you participate in those, definitely that's where your success lies. I'm sure you could go through it. There is that expectation that you go on the pod so many times a week, that you go to that many calls, but it's not so policed. I don't think that you would be told, hey, you're not posting. We do, in our pod, we go, oh, we haven't seen such and such for a little while. But the more you do participate and share, the easier it is. And I think that's a huge positive, that regardless of whether it's the Marco Polos or the groups, you do learn lots about different people. And I guess that's a really good leveler. Lots of different cultures, lots of different areas. I mean, there are quite a lot of people from the States, but in one of our calls, it must have aligned with Dubai. So we had a guy from Dubai on there quite a lot. And just, like all these people that we would never ever have met before have the same goal, that we wanted to be alcohol free. And just knowing that, and knowing that these people are super smart, successful, really great people, and knowing that not once did I feel like I didn't belong. I did in my head at the very, very beginning, but certainly no one ever made me feel that. It was me that was making me feel that at the beginning. And there's lots of things too, you know. I know sometimes I didn't keep up my motivation, and I learned that that's important, that you need to be motivated. Gratitude lists, I'm hopeless at them, but they do work.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's lots of things that now that I'm thinking about, I forgot about the gratitude list and doing that every day, and I forgot about listening to the videos every day, and yeah, but there's lots to be there's lots of positives. There was no negatives except for the stuff in my own head.
Yeah, right.
The story that I was telling myself.
Yeah. What was that story?
Oh, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart enough. At the beginning, I felt it was temporary because I didn't believe that I would be able to get to 90 days. And I stressed about that, especially when you've never gone past the 20-day mark ever. And that wasn't a time when I was really counting. But the weird part about it is, the closer it got to 90, we didn't really want it to finish because we were all starting to get a bit sad that it was going to finish. So,
yeah.
But yeah, and like in the calls, you learn lots of things. You learn lots of things, science things, things about like dopamine. A lot of your calls, Sarah, were based on that, and that was really interesting. And I'm not really a sciencey person, but it made complete sense. Also things on feelings and emotions. Mine were all over the place, and I remember at one stage saying that I wasn't feeling any joy, and here I was not drinking it. But then when you think about how erratic my feelings had been while I was drinking, I wasn't having the down, so the ups weren't as noticeable.
Yeah.
And it's not so bad to be just cruising along.
Stable.
Yeah. So.
And did you ever have a moment where you felt like giving up over the course of the 90 days?
No. I've never swayed from being alcohol free. The only times when I was challenged with drinking was because in the end of when I used to drink, I drank to cover up feelings and to not feel things. So when I started to have my personal problems become really overwhelming, at one stage I thought I might as well just go back to drinking because I don't feel like I'm getting any better, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that was the only reason why I wanted to give up, was so that I could go back to drinking and then not have to feel the feelings. But again, I think that was on a day when I was the blubberer, one that cried all the time on the Marco Polo. So they must have went, oh, here she goes again. But it was always of a morning usually, because I used to travel every week back to work. And so by the time I'd got all my tears out, I usually had a few calls when I got back into service to say, you'll be right. But yeah, so I was lucky. I just had a really supportive team. But certainly 90 days is a long time.
Yes, it is.
So, it's a whole season. But if you keep thinking 90 days, and that's, I think, what the project does, it says, don't think about 90 days. Think about today. Today's day 1 or today's day 10. Or if you think of it like that and you work from day to day, we celebrated milestones like the weeks and things like that. And, 10 days alcohol was out of our system. This was out of that. So that was good. But after a while, I know this sounds really ridiculous, but I remember someone saying, how many days? I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, how could you not know these 78 days alcohol free? But it became like that because that was almost the new norm for us. I don't know how people count and say on 1,358 days. But I mean, I actually had to check on my phone before we got on this call to see how many days. But yeah, after a while, it becomes the norm, and it's a nice norm.
It's a nice norm. Yeah. So tell me, if you think back to when you started to where you are now, how has life improved for you overall?
Well, I didn't lose the weight that I was hoping that I would.
Hmm.
Um, but I did look at my photo the other day of day one, and my skin is better and my face is thinner, so not so puffy. Um, on a physical sort of level, it is so nice not to wake up with a hangover and go to work feeling like crap and having to check your phone to see who you might have texted or rang. But also, and this is not, it is a positive, but I'm still working through it to be a better positive. But the first time in my adult life, I'm actually dealing with things and feelings, emotions, um, with clarity, not trying to mask the decisions or the feelings with alcohol. And so I guess, although it's post 90 now for the being alcohol, we drinking alcohol, I'm now on the journey of being able to be an adult, to feel all those feelings that I've never felt. Like before, if anyone had said to me about, I'm still can't meditate and journal and all that, but I'm getting a little bit better. Self-love, I'm getting a little bit better, but I'm certainly not going, I love you in the mirror yet. But all of those things that were certainly not on my radar or even a priority before. I thought I was pretty put together adult, dealt with some pretty shitty things over the time, but now I realise I never really dealt with things. And that's what alcohol-free living does to you. It gives you that opportunity to start to live without the complications that alcohol gives you. So, the way that I think about things, I can learn new things about myself, why I do, but also I can't use alcohol as an excuse anymore. So have to grow up.
Yeah. And there are so few people that have that commitment to growth in that regard, because we all often, we do often run around playing out our childhood challenges, and we don't get taught how to manage emotions or how to practice self-compassion. And I think we're all so hard on ourselves, right? And you see this in the group sometimes, that the biggest obstacle to creating a sense of freedom from alcohol is this sense that we are somehow bad or weak or shameful for having fallen into a trap which is essentially laying in wait for us, right? It's like nobody taught me the downsides of drinking, and everything taught me the upsides. My parents, my friends, the movies, society, we are bombarded with these messages. And so it's not surprising that we all end up, or not all of us, but many of us end up struggling, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I have always, for a small stint, I was in Sydney, and even then, everything in the country revolves around alcohol. First birthday, a christening, a baby shower, Saturday, anything. It's all is to do with alcohol. So probably a miracle that there's not. Well, there probably is lots of people that are challenged with alcohol that don't know that they are. And I'm not going to get on my high horse about that, but I know in Australia it's very difficult to not be exposed to it in some way.
Yeah.
And so I guess I've been quite fortunate, and I know that I said on the Marco Polo the other day how glad I was to meet all these people, and the reason was for something that was so horrible, drinking. So I wasn't the best person that I possibly could be. And, I'm nearly 50. There's lots of regrets there, things that I've missed. But I know now that there's lots of things that I won't miss because I will be alcohol free.
And that's the beauty, I think, of challenge in many ways, is we can see it as something really hard and painful, or we can see it as an opportunity to further grow and develop and learn about ourselves, which I know you've done so much of, Summer. So you've talked about the obviously sleep is a big improvement, your clarity, the way you're managing emotions. I would suggest tentatively that your self-respect has increased.
Yeah, well, I guess if you're not waking up and hating yourself for the first few hours like I was every morning and having that internal fight with myself about alcohol, that's just a natural consequence, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I was doing. I spent the whole day fighting in my brain. Will I have a drink today? Will I not have a drink? Oh, yes. It was a good day, have a drink. It was a bad day, have a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, but certainly I mean, yeah, I've done lots of work and I am proud of myself for sticking to it, because every time something I thought I was progressing, something would knock me down again. And yeah, I've kept at it.
And so before we wrap up, firstly, just like to say a huge thank you for coming on. The ability to speak so candidly and vulnerably and confidently about a struggle that so many of the listeners will be going through, quite possibly. I don't believe you can ever really know the impact of what this will mean for somebody, even if it's just one person. So I really want to thank you for coming on. And with that in mind, I'm going to invite you to share a message perhaps to anyone that's listening that may feel like they're really stuck at the moment in their experiences with alcohol.
Look, if being part of this project is an option for you, and as I said, I've tried lots of different things, lots of other groups, but it is done in a way that is completely different to anything else I experienced. And really reach out and give it a go. The majority of my pod that I still speak with have all changed in really good ways, and it's immeasurable. And the only thing that to gain is some friendships, a different life that you might be living. And yeah, when you think that it doesn't have to be hard. That's probably what I'm trying to get at. And this project wasn't hard. It's very, very supportive. And it is something that, and I hate to sound, big things, but this has saved my life. It was probably was my very last option. And I don't know where I was going to go from there. But yeah, it saved my life. And now, not only that, which is pretty important, I've got a group of friends, and I've got some tools behind me that, will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Well, Simone, thank you so much for joining us today. And your story is inspirational. It really is. And I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to talk with us. For anybody that's listening, if you'd like to learn more about Project 90, there's all the information in links beneath this episode, and you can reach out to us, have a call with one of our coaches, see if the program is right for you. For now, a big thank you to Simone, and have a wonderful day, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. This is Sarah from the Alcohol Free Lifestyle.
James Swanwick here again. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I want to send you some free stuff. If you haven't yet got the Alcohol Freedom Formula, then you can get that at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide. The YouTube channel is alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube. I put out lots of educational videos on my Instagram page at @JamesSwanwick. You can also find me on TikTok at @JamesSwanwick. If this show has benefited you, I would so appreciate you leaving a review and giving it 5 stars. We have a 5-day no alcohol challenge, a 30-day no alcohol challenge. You can get details over at alcoholfreelifestyle.com. And if you would like to apply to be part of Project 90, which is our flagship process where you get a community, 7 coaching calls per week are available to you, a like-minded community, mostly folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, then you are welcome to apply. You can get all the details over at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project 90, and the details are in the show notes. Thank you again for listening. I will catch you on the next one.